Hello, Misfits, and welcome. In today's video, we're talking all about how to create a safe space at your table that your players are going to want to keep coming back to. I cannot tell you how many horror stories I have read and listened to that basically just involve either the DM or the players not having an understanding of who is okay with what. Some line gets crossed, somebody's buttons get pushed, and somebody gets offended or upset or is made to feel uncomfortable so much that they just leave the table outright. So we're going to talk about how to avoid that and how to create a table that people want to be at and want to keep playing at so that we can all play this lovely game for as long as possible. So let's get into it. Number one, a great thing that you can do is establish lines and veils at your table. Some people call these hard lines and soft lines. These are things that your players are absolutely not okay with at all and don't want to encounter in the game, or things that might make your players feel uncomfortable, but they're okay experiencing them from time to time within your game. It's important to sit down and establish what these are so that you don't step on anybody's toes and make anybody feel just so uncomfortable that they don't want to play with you anymore. There are countless worksheets and papers that can be filled out that have a list of kind of your standard lines and veils that you might encounter in a game, and a lot of tables will use these, particularly if these tables are made up of people that might not know each other very well. And this is a great way to just sort of, you hand them that, you have them fill it out, they check off what they're absolutely not okay with and what they what's more of a gray area for them, and then they don't have to go through an awkward conversation where they're not sure what they're comfortable sharing and what they're not. It's just all on the paper and they give it back to you, and now you know how to carry on the story from there and how to adapt it to suit that player's needs. If your table is made up of people that know each other really well, then you can probably just have a conversation about it, which is kind of what my table did. We've played with each other for years, we know each other, most of us knew each other prior to the game and outside of the game, and so we just sort of talk with each other about what we're cool with and what we're not cool with. But yeah, it's very important to establish these boundaries. So lines, sometimes called hard lines, are things that people don't want to encounter in the game at all. They make them feel uncomfortable. They are things that they're not okay with. They might be triggering, whatever. They don't want to experience them in the game. They are things that are a hard no for those players or for that DM. You might have a player who is deathly afraid of spiders, and that's a hard line for them. That means you, if you're trying to cater to that player, would not need to put any spiders in their game. That's sort of an extreme example, but it's an example nonetheless. In my games, I really am not cool with kid characters being killed or things like that. So that's a hard line for me. I don't include that in my game. You're not going to see a young child just get brutally murdered in one of my campaigns. It's just not going to happen. Or inappropriate physical contact between an NPC and a character that's not consensual in any way. I'm not really cool with that in my games. Everybody's table is different, but that's where I draw my line. But a veil is something that's a little bit more of a gray area. Some people call these soft lines instead of veils, but these are things that might make people feel uncomfortable or might be things that we're not okay with, but we're okay with encountering them from time to time in a game, knowing that it's a game. A good example of a veil might be kidnapping. It's something that we all know is bad and we're not okay with and would never want to personally experience in the real world, but we're okay with encountering it in the game. And that's, a common sort of plot in a campaign. Somebody gets kidnapped and the heroes have to go save them. So that might be an example of lines and veils that kind of gives you an idea of things. Number two, communicate. So outside of just talking about what these hard lines and veils are, it's important to just check in with your players from time to time and just make sure everybody's okay with what is happening. A lot of this has to do with session 0, talking about the tone that you intend to establish with your campaign, the expectations that you expect at your table, but also this means just checking in from time to time. Something really serious or upsetting happens in the campaign, you might want to just, talk to that player outside of the game and just be like, hey, a lot of stuff just happened. How are you feeling about that? How do you feel about the story and the way it's going? How do you feel about the direction of your character? Things like that. Sometimes if I know that I am approaching a character's backstory arc and I know things are going to get serious, I will talk to that player and be like, hey, it's probably going to get kind of rough here for a bit. Is that something you're okay with? Or, hey, I have some ideas about your character's backstory. I would love a little bit of creative freedom. Are you comfortable with that? Or would you like me to, just be a little bit more open about communicating my intentions for the story? There are lots of ways to have that discussion, and I think the way in which you have that discussion is not as important as the fact that the discussion is had to begin with. Just make sure you're checking in with your players. If you've got an idea, a radical idea, and you're just not sure how it's gonna go over at the table, talk to your players about it. I mean, there are ways to have these discussions without giving away the sort of shock or surprise of a twist, but also at the end of the day, what's more important? Having a shocking twist or making sure the people at your table are having a good time and are comfortable with the story that you're telling? I think the latter is far more important and will, help you have a game that lasts years as opposed to weeks. Number 3, be open to change. This is a really tough one for DMs, I think, because we get this idea of what we want the story to be, but you have to remember, it's not just your story. The story also belongs to everybody at the table, and if the story that you're trying to tell is just not vibing with the people at your table, is just really making people upset or they're not comfortable with it, then be open to changing it. Some things that I do is, I'll be aware that some really tough things are happening in the real world outside of our game, and it's affecting how my players are and what they can handle and what they're willing to handle. So I might adapt the story because I know that they're having a tough time. If your player just lost their job and their dog just died, maybe now's not a good time to kill their character's entire family. Probably not. So maybe change the story, or maybe push some of that to later when the player's not having as hard of a time. I know that this is tough. I know we, have these really set ideas of what we want the story to be, but it has to be fluid. It has to be adaptable. And being able to cater the story to your players and what they need in real life at the time, I think, is what makes you a good DM. It's not easy to do, and it's something that I constantly struggle with, is giving up control. I have these ideas of how I want the story to go, but I have to let that go for the sake of my players. And I've certainly changed plot points and changed the way I thought the story would go because I knew that the change is what needed to happen to make my players happy. And that's far more important than any idea we have in our head. So these are just a few ways that you could create a safer space at your table that's going to make your players more comfortable and make them want to keep coming back to your table, which is far more important. We all love this game. We want to play it for as long as possible. So why not, try to make that happen? Why not make it to where the people that you're playing with want to keep coming back? It's tough. D&D, Pathfinder, all of these types of games are really, really tough because they have the potential to go to some very deep personal places. They are a place where we can sort of dive into that and sort of explore how we think about the world and think about ourselves and things. And it's hard to sort of navigate those passageways. And, you know, maybe DMs should all take a course in, like, I don't know, therapy or I don't know, social work or something, because sometimes we kind of dive into some of those areas that can be tough. They can be tough to deal with. So it's important to just sort of make sure that everybody's okay, and make sure everybody's having a good time. Because while D&D and while the table is a great place to work through some of these things, it should also be an escape. It should also be a way to get away from sort of the hard stuff that we have to deal with in everyday life. You know, if we're like, you know, struggling to get through a day at work, and then we come home and we play a game and it's just the same kind of brutal slog that just weighs you down, that's not fun. It's not fun. So we've got to figure out how to balance things and how to make sure that this game feels like a game and an escape, not torture or something that makes us sad, you know? I feel like it should be enjoyable. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video and you found any of this useful, please feel free to like and subscribe. But more importantly, leave a comment down below. Tell me about ways that you kind of establish a safe space at your table. Tell me about ways that you check in with your players and make sure that you're not crossing any hard lines for them. Any of those things are great to hear about from you guys, and they really tell me a lot about everybody's individual experiences, and they help us all sort of learn how to be better DMs and better players, because we can learn from each other, from each other's experiences. So please share. But with all of that out of the way, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and I will see you again next time. It's legitimately been a very long time since I've sat down and made one of these videos. You might not realize it because, you know, I filmed some stuff in advance, but yeah, it's been a while. Rehearsals are chugging along for the show that I'm in. I believe we have 6 rehearsals left before the show. And, you know, that whole process has been a little interesting. They've changed the dates of our performances like 2 or 3 different times, which has been interesting. But yeah, all's well, all's going well. We started playing the campaign again, which was great. I really enjoyed diving back in. Having a breakaway was really nice. It really put me in a better headspace for continuing the story. So we've got a few more campaign sessions that we'll dish out, and then we'll kind of be away for our sort of holiday break. We do have a holiday one-shot planned, so you'll probably see that towards the end of December. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Yeah, I don't know, just sort of a check-in, I guess. I don't have any like funny story or silly antics for you today, just sort of letting you know what's going on. But yeah, have a good day, guys.